Welcome to the Cooking with Excel webinar. We are so happy you could make it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex Willis. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Omega. If you have any questions about this webinar or just Excel in general, please email me at alexalex@omegacomputerservices.com. Also remember, we will be sending you this webinar, so if you have any pressing issues that do come up, please feel free to go take care of those. One other announcement before we get going. I'd like to direct your attention to the right-hand side of your screen, I believe, is a chat box. I muted you guys for the sole fact of I didn't want a bunch of questions coming in, and then we got off track of what was going on. So if you have any questions, please direct them towards the chat box, and we'll be here to answer them in real time. And if we can't get to them, if they're a little too difficult questions, we'll make sure to send you an email afterwards with our solution or to get more information on that. Other than that, I think we're ready to get going. And the first thing we're going to do here is the most exciting thing we'll do all day is definitions. The top row here is always referred to as columns, and then this side row here, this vertical side row, is always referred to as rows. And then this top section with all the buttons will be referred to as ribbons. So if you hear me say ribbons, now you know what I'm talking about. All right, that's it. That's all the definitions. There's no more, I promise. The first thing that we're going to do here is a little bit of formatting. This is going to start off pretty basic simply because I just want to get the mind going, making sure we're all on the same page. Overall, this webinar is pretty basic. We just want to make sure that you guys are using Excel the right way, and if you have any questions about it in general, we can talk about it. So the first thing, you can see that I put a decent amount of information in here, but I can't really tell what's going on. I need to have some type of categories popping out at me, but nothing's really going on. So I'm going to go ahead and format this top row. If I left click and drag over the columns I want to edit, I'm just going to make these guys a little bit bigger. 22. We can change the background on it, make it nice green, and then we can change the font. Let's make it a white. All right, so now that you can tell that you know what's going on with the top categories, you know what's following underneath. So that's just the basic formatting section of that. Also, let's align these guys up. I like them to align to the information underneath, so I'm going to go ahead and make it to the right. You can see these other options, which can be helpful if you have more text in a cell. So if there is a couple sentences there, you can align it middle, make it look a little cleaner. You can line it to the top, but right now we're just going to keep it as is. The next thing we're going to talk about is adjusting the width of your columns and your rows. So there's a couple ways to do that. The easiest one is you see this double arrow that comes up. If you left click and drag it, you can see that it'll change the width of it. So I can go ahead and make it bigger or smaller. Another nice feature of Excel, if I want to, let's go ahead and highlight this all. By the way, this top left hand section in between the A and the 1 will always highlight your sheet, everything that's involved in it. So now that I have my whole sheet selected, if I go ahead and click the width of this, it'll make them all the exact same size, but I don't want to do that. However, if you double click this when the double arrow is up there, it will fill the column so they fit to the text perfectly. So that's a nice way to make it clean. So you can see that I double clicked here and now all the text is filled up with the column. Just some simple things with adjusting the sizing of your columns and rows. The next thing I'm going to talk about is inserting a column. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can do this from the Insert tab, which makes sense, or you can also do it a quicker way, which I prefer. So I want to insert a column between store name and quantity here. So if I want to put that in between those two, you always go to the column to the right of that. So you can see that I'm lining up the C column here, which is to the right of where I want it to be. So if I right click and I click insert, you can see that it pushes quantity to the right and fills it in there. So let's go ahead and name this date purchased. Click enter, and now you can see that the text is a little cut off here. So if you go to the top in this double-sided arrow again, I'll click it, double click it, and it'll fill it to the right way. And now let's say I want to let it be known that I bought these items on today's date. Let's go 6/21/17. Enter here. So now that information is there. So if we highlight this, you can see this little square in the bottom right hand corner. If you hover your cursor over it, it'll turn it into this black X. So if you left click and drag this all the way down, so I bought all this at Doug's Superstore today. So if I let it go, it'll fill in the options for the next day. So it goes the 22nd, 23rd, all the way down to the July 21st. However, we didn't want it to do that. So if you go here to the autofill options and left click on that, you get some fill days, fill week, weekdays. You can fill with forming and formatting without formatting, excuse me. But we don't want to do that. We just want to copy these cells down. So if you click copy cells, you can see it just mimics the top cell that I'm trying to get. So let's say I went to Omega Farmers the day after and purchased stuff, so tomorrow's date. And now that I know that it's going to autofill to the next day, I just go ahead and drag that once down, and then I can drag it all the way to the bottom. And then from there, I can left click and then copy cells once again. So that's just the basic of inserting a column and kind of working with the autofill feature. The autofill feature is really helpful when working with numbers. So if you want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or kind of recognize the formatting that you're going for. The next thing we're going to talk about is just the basic number format here. So I have these dates purchased, but say I want to see what day I actually bought them on, what day of the week. So if I go ahead and select all these guys, I can come up to this number formatting section, and you can see already that I have two date options. So we have short date, which is currently being used, and long date. So I'm going to switch it over to long date, and now you can tell that I bought these on Wednesday and Thursday. The next thing that we're going to do, actually let's stick with the normal number format. We can change this unit price here. So you can see that it's just in a general decimal format here, but we're going to change this because we use money to buy these things. So you can either go accounting and currency. Accounting I'll give you a quick view of. Accounting is useful if you're working with negative numbers. It will actually turn it red. It won't actually show the negative sign. But we are going to work with currency right now. So let's go back to that. There we go. All set with that. I'm actually going to show you guys now some just very generic formulas and kind of how Excel reads that you're about to input a formula. So I have the unit price and how many I bought, so let's go ahead and do that. If I click the equal sign, that's how Excel recognizes that I'm about to start a formula. So from here, I can click on the unit price of the $2.99, and then I want to multiply it by the quantity of how many I bought. So you can see that I bought 2 here. But before I go and do that, let me just run you through the basics. So if I go the cell and then I use the plus sign, it's going to add it to the 2. If I go minus, it's going to subtract it. If I go the slash, it's going to divide it. But we want to multiply. So if you go asterisk, and then if you click on the cell that you want here, and then click enter. So you see that it multiplied the 2 together and gave you a 598. But now I want it to be dragged down to every other row here that I have. So if I go ahead and do the autofill option, it's going to take that formula all the way down to the bottom. So now that I'm there, you can see that everything was filled in properly. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is duplicates and how to get rid of them. So this is helpful if you're working with a bunch of email addresses and maybe you think you might have 1 or 2 that are have shown up twice, and you can get rid of them and really clean your list. You can see that I have 2 bell peppers here, and I think 2 cooked shrimp, and I think there's a couple more in here that I set up so we could get a good grasp on this. You want to be careful when using the duplicates, because if I just were to select this A column, it would only get rid of the name. It wouldn't get rid of all their information. So I'm going to go ahead and select this whole sheet, and then if I go to data and then remove duplicates, pretty simple. And then it sees that I want all of this sheet selected. So if I click OK here, it says 7 duplicate values have been removed, and the 66 remain. So if I click OK on that, you can see that black peppers is gone. There's only 1 now, and there's only 1 cooked shrimp here. So that's just the basics of the duplicates tool. Once again, it can be handy with working with names or any sort of that type of information. So if I go, excuse me, the next thing that we're going to do is text to columns. So this tool is helpful when you're working with, say, first name, last name, you want to split them up into two different columns. Maybe you have to import them or export them out of somewhere, but you have a list with they're together in the same cell. So splitting them up. So to show you guys that, I am going to insert a new column here and name it store type. Enter. So you see I have these two stores here, Doug's Superstore and Omega's Farmers. So this one's a superstore and this one's, say, a farmer's market. I want to split that up so I know where I'm buying my goods at. The easiest way to do that, if I highlight all of these and then I'm staying in the data section. If you go text to columns, you have two options here, fixed width and delimited. We're going to stick with this one. The fixed width is basically you can set the certain point where you want it to cut the word off at. So we'll click next here. This section lets you set up the rules of where you want it to be separated. So maybe there was a comma involved, but in this one there's a space. So you can see that it puts that line in there right away, and that's where it's going to cut it off at. So if I click next, it also gives you the options of, do you want it to just be in general format? Do you want to make it a date? So we're just going to go ahead and click finish here because we want it in general. And now you can see that it's footed. So that is the basics of text to columns. So the last thing we're going to do in the overall organization before we head to shortcuts is freezing the top pane. So this is very helpful when you have a lot of information that looks the same, or just there's a lot that you have to scroll through. So you can see once I scroll through to the bottom, I'm not really sure what sections these are in, not really sure what's going on here. Is this a pricing or quantity or what? The best way to do this is if you go to view and then you have this freeze panes option, excuse me. And if you click there, you have a couple options. You can freeze the whole rows and columns on the left hand side. You can freeze just the first column or freeze the top row, and we're going to do just to freeze the top row. So now that it's frozen, if I go ahead and scroll down, you can see that it follows with me. So now I know where everything's at. And that is the basic of overall organization. I'm going to go ahead and unfreeze this now, and then we're going to just jump over to some basic shortcuts. These next couple sections are going to be fairly fast. The overall organization was kind of the longest. So let's just jump into these basics of shortcuts here. I'm just going to basically say them out to you guys as I'm doing them. You'll kind of see how it happens. We'll also have a little icon up to show you what's going on the keyboard section. So the first one we're going to go to is jump to the top of a column. If I hold down Control and then the up arrow, you can see that my highlighter goes to the top of the column. And the same is for the opposite. If I go Control down, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom. One other useful one is inserting a new sheet. So if I go Shift F11, it brings up a new sheet at the bottom with these other guys that I have, shopping list, formulas, and error codes, which we'll get to in a little bit. I don't need that for now, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Now we can do a little bit more of formatting with shortcuts. So if I select this, and I can go Control Shift percentage sign, and it'll change those automatically to percents. If I go Control Shift money sign, excuse me, it'll go back to the dollar sign. A couple other formatting ones. If I go Control 2, it will bold it. If I go Control 3, it'll italicize it. I'm gonna take those back though. Another commonly used shortcut is hiding rows. So say I didn't want rows 17 to 30. I could hide them with a simple Control 9. And now you can see that it's cut off right from 16 all the way down to 31. So this is, if you want to make a sheet smaller, basically to look at different data, that's a good shortcut to use. But for right now, we're going to unhide those, bring them back. The last one we're going to go over, I know the shortcut section is kind of small. I saw that most of you read the 100 most used shortcuts that we posted earlier. So you have those. We're also going to send you guys a nice little cutout for you for the frequently used shortcuts. So the last ones is selecting rows and columns. So if I go Shift up, I can select all these one by one, and it'll take it as many times as I click it. And also if I go shift down, I can go one at a time doing it that way. The next one is if I go control shift up, it will select all of the ones above that 2 that I'm on, or control shift down, it will select the ones all the way to the bottom. The last couple that I'm going to do is control spacebar, which will select the whole column, or if I go shift spacebar, it will select the entire row. And then the very last one, if I go control A, that will select the entire sheet. So that is really it for the shortcut section. Now we're going to go ahead and move to making this guy a table so it's easier to view your work and sort it. So the easiest way to make a table here is to select all your data, first and foremost. And then there's 2 ways you can do this. You can go insert table, but my favorite way to do it is just right from the home. If you go format as table, and then you can select what you want to use here. So let's say I'll just make it this green one here and click OK. So now you can see that you have these arrows that pop up, and it's a little bit nicer looking than before. So from here, there's a couple things that you can do with, say, if we want to arrange our totals, we can sort them by color. If we highlight separate ones, there's like, wow, this caught a lot, or maybe there was a deal that was going with this item. However, let's just try like the largest to smallest. So you can see here that you have the sort $79 for portobello mushrooms. Wow, that's expensive. But tables are really simple. I just wanted to show you guys how to set them up. You can do a lot with the number filters. I'll give you a quick example with this one too. So if I go greater than, what did I click on? Totals? Okay. Yeah, if I go number filters and then greater than, so let's say if it's greater than $3, I want it to show on this. So if I do that, you can see that everything that's above $3 is now showing on the sheet, and everything else is hidden. So if I go back and unclick this, everything will pop back up in the sheet. Oh, excuse me, I put 0. There we go. Okay. Now, besides that, that's pretty basic with the tables. If you guys want to know more on tables and working with conditional formulas, let me know. Send me an email because there's a lot you can do with this. I just didn't want to waste a lot of time because if we start to get into some of the bigger side of things, we could lose out on working with the other things. So I'm going to head to this formula tab that I made for you guys, and we're going to do some basic formulas that I think are handy and aren't too complex and just super basic. So we're going to head over to the formula section, and you can see I have this count if, days, network days, trim, len, and upper. So we're going to go through each one, and the easiest way to do it, like I said earlier, you can put the equal sign and do it yourself, but if you go ahead here and click insert function, it'll bring up a huge list of all of the functions that are available to you. So right now we are in the COUNTIF section, so it's already highlighted. You can see I've used these recently. So if I click OK here, the COUNTIF actually counts the words you're looking for. So I'm going to highlight this range, and you can see it fills it in. It's asking me for the range. And then the criteria, say I wanted to count how many times I say omega in this little worksheet here. If I click OK, it's going to bring up 2. So you can see that it's right. There's 2 omegas here. So that's just the basic of the COUNTIF. So next we'll move over to days. So we have from today's date to the wonderful day of Christmas. So if I click insert function here, and days is already in here. Since I've already used these functions, they are in my recently used, but if you need to find them, you can simply type them and they'll come up right away. So if I go ahead and click OK on the days, my end date is Christmas, 12/25. My start date is today. If I click OK, you can see that the outputs of 187 days until Christmas. And now the next one is work days. So this is just taking the 5 days out of the week. If I go insert function And then you can see that network days is here. I click OK. My start date on this one is today, and my end date is the 25th. And let's say maybe there's 4 holidays leading up to that. So you can see there's 134 work days until Christmas. Next, we can work with trim. So let's go insert function here, and then trim. Click OK on that one. And then this one is very simple. So if you click text of the cell that has the text that you want to make it smaller and just one space in between, this function will do it for you. So this is very useful when you import data from somewhere else. Often you get like weird spaces. Trim definitely helps out with that. So if I select Omega Computer Services and click OK, you can see that it just makes it to one space in between each word. And if I pull that down, actually, like we went over earlier, it will do that with all 3 of these options because it's following the formula where I started. The next formula we're going to go over is len, which counts the words in a cell. So if I go here to len and click OK, once again, this one's simple. If I just click the cell above the Cooking with Excel, and then I click OK, you can see that there's 18 characters here. This includes spaces as well, so I just want you to be aware of that. So there's 18 characters in here, including spaces. And then the last one that we're going to go over, the formulas, once again, I just wanted to keep them super simple, ones that can be used for fun and also definitely really help you out. So this last one is upper. Can change everything to uppercase that you have all the text here. So if I go ahead and click hello and click OK, you can see that it changes to uppercase, and if I drag it down, it fills in the rest with hello, how are you? And that's really it for formulas. Once again, we're going to have a survey for you guys at the end of this. If you want to see more formulas, if you want to get more in depth with Excel, please let me know. This is our first webinar, so we would love the feedback from you guys. And now we're leading into the last section here, which is error codes. So these guys you hate to see, but no one really takes the time to learn how to fix them. So I'm just going to go through and show you guys the basic ones and how to get rid of them if they do pop up. So this first one is the easiest one and always makes me feel stupid when I forget what's going on. You see a bunch of these pound signs come up. What's actually going on here is there's just not enough room for it to sit. So if I left click and drag it out, you can see that it's actually there, but it's just showing you there's not enough room for it to work. So that's just the easy way to get rid of that error code. The next one is this # div and then divide sign 0, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. This just means you're trying to divide by 0, so that's why it's not working. So you can see here up in this formula tab, I'm dividing these 2 columns. I'm dividing 4 divided by 0, so that's not going to work. So we're going to have to go and change that if I wanted to make a correct output. So we got rid of that by just changing it to a 2. Reference, I'll have to show you guys how to do this. So there's formulas in this cell right here. These are all taking the sum of these, so adding these ones together and giving you the answer. But if I go ahead and I delete this column, it's going to change that to reference, and that's simply because it's missing a reference point. So if I go here, you can see that now it says reference in the formula because it's trying to look for that column that's not there. So if I go ahead and click undo, you're adding the column back. So just make sure if you're deleting columns that they're not associated with any formulas in your worksheet. This one, it's #null. So this just means that something is going on in your formula. It's most likely just a comma is the majority of situations where this error code gets brought up. So you can see here that I'm missing a comma between my N3 and my O3 during the sums. So if I come up to this formula bar, and I select back and I put the comma in there and click enter, I have the right formula in there now. So just beware. Null is usually a tough one to figure out because it can be a lot more than just commas, but it means something in your formula is wrong, and this can be very frustrating if you're working with a little bit of longer formulas. This last one that we're going to go over is name. So it's #name, and if I go here, you can see that it's simply missing the initial formula. So it's just equal SU, and I'm actually missing the M. So to fix that, if I put M here and click enter, it's going to fix that. So now I can take this and drag it all the way down, and now that's fixed. So that's it, guys. I want to thank you so much again for coming. I hope you learned a little bit. Once again, this is our first webinar, and after I close this out, you're going to get brought up to a little questionnaire. Please fill it out. We want to keep doing these. We want to help you guys out, but we need a little more knowledge on what you guys are struggling on technology-wise, or if there's any software you want to work on, please let me know, and I'll make sure to get that going for you. So yeah, thank you very much, and I hope you had fun. Email me. It's Alex, ALEX, at omegacomputerservices.com with any questions that you have. All right. Have a good one, guys. See ya.